This week, we recreated Mimi Wong's Savoury breakfast porridge. So to start this recipe, you're going to start with the pork. Now, the recipe states that you need a boneless piece. I get a bone in, and I just remove the bones. And I also got some skin on, so I just removed the skin, and I just cut all the fat off. She also doesn't use crispy pork skin in the recipe, which I'm going to be adding that because, you know, crispy pork skin. It's always good. Also, the bones, I'll be using those in the broth. Again, not in the recipe, but it's going to make it better. So we need to truss this piece of pork belly up. I'm just going to tie each piece individually because I'm probably only going to use 3 or 4 pieces. So you butcher's twine here, you lay it out. Then we're going to try and get this as tight as possible into a roll. Okay, now the best way to do this is to loop your string at least 2 or 3 times. And then as you pull. Okay, so because it was such a small cut, I ended up having to put a couple more pieces of twine on there. But it should look a little something like this. So now we'll set this aside for the time being, while we crack on with the other stuff. The next thing, we're going to brown off some leek and shallots that are going to go into the broth. So we'll start with the leek. You just want to zip the end off and then cut this down lengthwise. Then make sure you get all the way to the root that's chopped off on the end. And that way, if there's any dirt or anything trapped in these stems, which this is looking pretty clean, but I'm going to run some water through it just to wash it off, just to make sure that there's no dirt and crud stuck between the leaves. Okay, the next is the shallots. You're just going to zip these all in half. Now it doesn't say it, but I'm going to take off a little bit of the outside paper. I'm going to go through and peel these, and then we'll get them in the pan. Alright, so I've just got a pan here. I've already got a medium heat going with some oil in it. And then also, I chopped my leek in half again, this way, just so it'll fit in my braising pot a little bit better. So we're going to put those cut side down in the pan, just to get a nice bit of caramelization going on it. Also in this pan, got my shallots. We'll put those cut side down as well. So yeah, just keep you on it and we'll come back when it's nice and caramelized. And another frying pan, we're also going to get on a medium heat, add a bit of oil, swirl it around. And into this one, we're going to add some sliced ginger, going to add the corn cob. And the recipe's not really clear, but I'm going to add the corn kernels in here as well. I just took those off the cob. Now in Austria, I couldn't find a fresh corn cob, so I had to buy this already cooked one that's in a cryovac pack, but it'll be just fine. And also, into this pan, we're going to add some bacon. Now I've just cut this down into like whole strips, into chunkers like this. I'm not sure if I was meant to do that, but it's just going to make things a lot more manageable to get this all rendered out and crisped up a little bit. And we'll get this caramelizing off as well. Back to the shallots and the leek. As you can see, they're getting a nice color. So we'll just go ahead and flip everything around. You're getting some nice color. Once you've had it cooking away here, and you've got a nice little fond built up on the bottom, you just want to pour some water in there, just to deglaze it all. And then we're going to scrape all that fond up off the bottom. Now with your leek and onions, same thing, you're going to pour some water in there, and you're going to scrape all that nice fond up off the bottom of this one as well. Now at this point in the recipe, it says you've got to dump all this into a pressure cooker, but I don't have a pressure cooker. So I'm going to be doing this on a stovetop. So all this leek and the juice that you use to deglaze, also known as water I guess, you're going to add into the pot. Also the bacon, the corn, and the ginger, you're going to plunk all that into a pot as well. Also at this point, I'm going to add those pork bones in, if you have pork bones. Otherwise, if you already bought a boneless pork belly, you ain't got no bones to put in, so you'd skip that step I guess. So I'm just going to give this a little mix around, get it all nicely placed in there. I'm going to grab the pork belly and we're going to nestle that in nicely down there. I'm going to add some more water, just like that. We're going to season it generously. And we'll just give it one last little move around. Get that pork nicely seated in there. I'm going to add just a touch more water. We are braising this after all. So I'm going to put this on high heat for the moment. We're going to bring this up to a nice simmer, and then we'll reduce the heat. I'm going to let this simmer away on the stove for a few hours. So I've got it up to a simmer. It's blipping away nicely there. I'm just going to cover it up. I'm not actually 100% sure how long this is going to take, but because we're not using a pressure cooker, I'm just going to let it sit on the stove here for a few hours, and then we'll come back when it's finished. So the next step is going to crisp up 3 slices of bacon. Now I'm making crispy bacon, so obviously I'm doing more because crispy bacon is amazing. Also I've got my pork belly skin on this same tray, baking paper, piece of baking paper, lay them all out, put another tray on top, and we're going to stick this in the oven that's been preheated to 180 degrees for about 30 to 40 minutes. Then we'll come back and have a look. The next thing we'll do, pickle some leek. I've got the white part of a leek here. I'm going to cut this in half, then we're going to give it a quick wash to make sure there's no dirt. So after I give them a wash out, I'm just going to chop these in half again like this, and then we're going to slice. So then we'll put them on the board, and we'll give them a little push, and we're going to just slice these into super thin little strips. So I'm going to go through and get all this done, and then we'll come back. I've got my leek all cut up into nice little thin strips, and put into a bowl. So here I've got the zest of a whole lemon, and the juice of half of it, and some salt. I'm going to plop that in a bowl, and we're going to give this a nice massage. Start softening up the leeks, and to get the pickle started. Now is also a good time to tell you that all the correct amounts and ingredients that I'm using will be on the website, traditionalbutnot.com. And we'll also link the proper recipe on the 10 Play website. Once you've got it all nicely massaged up, you just want to set it aside and let it pickle for at least 20 minutes. So the bacon's been in the oven for about 40 minutes now, and now I'm going to remove the top and I'm going to stick it back in till it gets nice and crispy. Also, you see this bit of pork belly is starting to puff? That's going along quite nicely too. Once your bacon looks like that, it's ready. So we're just going to let it chill out on the board here to crispen up while we finish off this little piece of pork skin here. And once your piece of pork skin is nice and crispy and puffed up like that, we're also going to set it aside to rest with the bacon. For the crispy ginger, I've gone ahead and just sliced up, julienned up some ginger, and I've got some neutral oil heated up in a little saucepan here. So we're just going to add these and we're just going to shallow fry these until they're nicely golden and crispy. When your ginger's nice and crispy like that, you want to remove it from the pot and put it onto a paper towel and plate. To make the compound butter, I've got some dates in a bowl. I'm just going to cover them in some hot water, boiling water to be exact, and I'm going to let them sit for 10 minutes. To finish off the compound butter, you just want to add your dates to you want to get all the water out first, add your dates to a little food processor along with some butter. Now I didn't have any white pepper, but I had some different coloured peppers, so I just ground that down, should be alright, and some black garlic. This is the first time I've ever using black garlic, and I must say, it tasted quite a lot different to what I expected, but in a good way. So we'll bang on the lid, pop on the top, and we'll blend until nice and homogeneous. Obviously, gonna have to stop. Give it a little bit of a scrape down halfway through, just to make sure everything's getting combined. Also, I'm not sure if I mentioned before, but it was softened butter that I added. Okay, top goes back on, blend again. Once you've got it nice and mixed up, the glass I had the black garlic sitting in, I'm just gonna add the butter straight back into this. So the pork's been on, boobling away on the stove for right on 3 hours now, and it's ready. I did flip it around a couple of times, just to make sure it was cooking evenly there. Once it's out of the tray, we're going to set this off to the side for around 15-20 minutes just to cool down, and then we're going to stick it in the fridge to let it cool down even further. I've got a pan sitting here with a strainer over the top, and we're just going to strain this broth, or all this liquid, straight into the pan. Once you've got it strained, you're going to set this on the stove on a medium heat till it reduces by half. So I'm going to put some oil to a pan. I'm using the same oil that I fried the ginger off in before. I'm going to add that to the pan, then we're going to add the corn to it. Now since I'm using frozen corn, I don't have to cook my corn through, so I'm just going to wait for it to come up to temperature and get a little bit of char on, then we'll start basting with the butter. Corn starting to get a little bit of colour on it, so now we're just going to add in some of the compound butter, and we're just going to have this on a low heat, and we're just going to let this butter melt down, and we're just going to baste the corn for a couple of minutes there. Alright, after you've cooked them off for a few minutes, you just want to turn off the heat and set them aside till you're ready to use them. Okay, once your stock's reduced by half, you just want to take it off the heat until you're ready to jump onto the next step with it. To make the porridge, I've got a pot on the stove here. And while we spill the oats all over the stovetop, we try and get some of them in the pot. Okay, to the oats, we're going to add water and some of the broth we just made. Alright, we're going to give this a little mix up, and we're going to bring it up to a boil. Alright, so we've got it up to just about a boil, so now we're going to reduce the heat a little bit, and we're going to cook this for around 5 to 8 minutes, and stirring frequently, or until we reach the desired consistency, which we'll come back when it's ready. Once your porridge is finished, and it looks a little something like this, we're just going to set it aside till we're ready to plate. If it tightens up a little bit too much on you, just add a little bit more of the broth to it to thin it back out. Once your leek's been sitting there pickling away for a little bit, you just want to squeeze a little bit of the juice out, and you're ready to set it aside till you're ready to use it. So I've got my pork belly here, it's been chilling out in the fridge for a little bit, now we're ready to slice it. So because I cooked this on a stovetop and braised it, I just temped the middle of it, and I took it out when it was around 92 degrees in Celsius, which should be the temperature right before it falls apart. So I'm hoping that it's not going to crumble into a big mess. But we took it out right on the right temperature. So it looks like it's going to hold together and everything's going to be fine. Got a pan on medium-high heat, and we're just going to put the slices in and get good colour on both sides. Alright, once you got good colour on one side, you just want to flip it over and get good colour on the other side. So as you can see, I'm essentially deep frying the pork belly at the moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the pork belly out of the pan. I'm going to drain this fat off, and then we'll put the pork belly back in and add the butter, because at the moment, yeah, there's a lot of fat in the pan. And we have absolutely amazing colour on it at the moment. We've got the pork belly back in the pan, and now we're going to add a couple of big spoonfuls of this compound butter. We'll mix it around, get it all coated. You want to do this on a bit of a lower heat too, so you don't burn the butter. So once the butter melted down, we'll just make sure it's got coated the pork, and then we'll come back. Once your butter's all melted down and it's nicely coated over the pork, you want to remove it and you're ready to plate. So before I get stuck into this, I can't believe she got all this done. I think it was 75 minutes. There's a lot of little components to this dish. Creamy egg yolk. So good. I haven't even got to the pork yet. I just want to keep eating. I don't want to say anything about it just yet. Let me have a little bit of this. Well, what do I say about this? Speechless. This is so damn good. I've never used black garlic before, and we found a little ferment place around the corner that sells it. I think I'll be heading back there to get a little bit more and cooking this at least one more time. Usually porridge is sweet, but I think I'll be cooking it savoury from now on. It wasn't a part of the main recipe, but I almost forgot.